that I'm only doing the French voice because Passepartout is the only person that has any big amount of talking in it. So I'm gonna just do Singapore. We're going to Singapore, right? We're gonna just do that because we're gonna go to Singapore anyway. In a hotel for the night. Monsieur... Oh, gosh dang, I'm already going to the French thing. Monsieur Fogg cared not a straw for the wonders of Bombay, but gave me a few hours' leisure as he settled into his evening paper. I ended up wheezing and puffing my way up Malabar Hill, the highest point in South Bombay. I paused at the top and looked out at the bay. British airships dominated the skyline, tethered loosely to the gunboats that patrolled the docks. Brightly painted merchant ships darted into the harbor, eager to unload their cargo before the light faded. Catching my breath, I found my steps irresistibly drawn towards the Hanging Gardens, which shielded the Parsi Tower of Silence from the bay. The Hanging Gardens were magnificent. Little steam-powered curricles and horse-drawn carriages vied for space underneath the shady trees. Old men played chess on the stone benches while young men and women jeered and shouted advice which was cheerfully ignored. And in the shadow of the gardens I saw the symbol of the copper lily on the door of a converted mansion. I approached and knocked on the door, and was given a cup of tea and a cushioned wicker chair almost as soon as I crossed the threshold of this outpost of the Artificers' Guild. The setting was opulent, an open plaza lit from the skylights above, lined with palm trees as large urns. A fountain in the middle of the room had been converted to pump steam, which drove the pistons of a gilt-edged suspended organ, which clattered out a lively tune. A middle-aged Sikh in a bright blue turban and admirably pressed trousers approached me. "What is it you require, traveler?" "My master and I are going around the world." The man nodded. "I see. Well, then, welcome to Bombay." "I am interested in transportation," I told them. "What inventions have you made?" The artificers bickered amongst each other at the least 6 different languages before Dharampull, the sheik, smiled. "We have invented many small things that are useful but not important, like caps that prevent water from falling from bottles when tipped suddenly upside down. But in transportation we have done nothing." "There are no rocket ships, no motorized snakes, nothing?" He laughed. "Nothing. Though there is the walking city of Agra, of course, but we did not build that." "A walking city? Sounds incredible." "It is. The Guild has outposts in India as much to discover the past of this great country as to invent the future." "But there is no way to Agra from here," I protested. The artificer shrugged. "I suppose not. The train to Calcutta goes via Albad, further to the south." I thanked the artificers profusely before taking my leave, though, alas, I was so distracted by my musings that I failed to notice 2 thuggish fellows with ill intent who cornered me in a side street and demanded my shoes. A man's shoes are his castle, I contended, which had the laudable effect of confusing them for a few moments while I attempted a discreet but ultimately fruitless escape. I returned to my master barefoot and rather shamefaced. "I hope that this will not happen again," and said my master coldly. "That was not to be the last word on Bombay, gateway to the jewel of the crown of the British Empire, except... And what, pray, has happened to your shoes?" "Ah, Monsieur Fogg. We are going to a Calcutta. Embark." "Looks quite bothersome, Monsieur Fogg, but I'm sure you can handle it." The clerk, who took our money, counted it out fastidiously, and then recounted it before issuing us a ticket. "A ticket to Calcutta, Sahib. 4 days, no faster way in the world." I nodded and thanked her, too exhausted already to listen to a sales talk after a sales had been made. She gave me an edged smile. I should have known she was lying, but we boarded the train blissfully ignorant of our fate. Uh-oh. Wait, I guess. Launch from Yokohama soon. Ooh. So that's the one that I took last time. And let me tell you, It did not go well. But if we head that way again, maybe, just maybe. The train started with a sudden screech, but entirely punctual. We shared our compartment with a tall, fair fellow by the name of Sir Francis, who was an old Indian hand. My master made no secret of the circumstances of his journey, and our new friend clearly thought him entirely devoid of common senses. An uncharitable view, which did not endear him to me. Our wager was now in full swing. I began to worry over delays and obstacles, both imagined and real. Monsieur Fogg's cool-headed demeanor seemed incorrigible, and made me admire him all the more, while stiffening my resolve to aid him in winning his wager at any cost. I slept fitfully, though the berths were comfortable enough. I had an uneasy feeling about our journey across India. Well, should have said something before, Monsieur Fogg. Will help you. Today, Sir Francis told me of the region we were passing through. Monsieur Fogg, who was not traveling but merely describing its circumference, preferred to reread his edition of the Morning Post. I was more interested in acquiring new shoes. My chance came at the next stop, where I managed to lay my hands on a pair of rather fine loafers of buttery soft camel leather. Monsieur Fogg gave my feet a glance of brisk appraisal. Funds went down slightly. Oh well. Vladivostok? Converse. Rishish. Calcutta to... It was an S word. Ragoon? Chittagong? Is that Singapore? All right. The train conductor woke us up as he passed along the carriages. Passengers will get out here. Monsieur Fogg gave me a look, so I determined to find a way to make our journey continue, though my hopes on that were quickly dashed when I discovered there was no more track. Apparently the papers had been somewhat... Many of the other passengers... Well, let's do this one. Many began to load their bags into palanquins, ponies, steam carriages, which all had clearly been previously arranged. Sir Francis looked quite ready to knock the conductor flat on his back, though my master betrayed not even the slightest hint of dismay. I asked the conductor, who merely shrugged and pointed towards the minarets of the city. Everyone must organize their own transportation, he said, cutting off my remonstrations. A boy not long out of short trousers seemed to take pity on us, or at least had a wish to practice his English, and directed us towards a local merchant who had recently purchased a large mechanical elephant for Bombay. Hey! Let's embark to Calcutta. Oh, Monsieur Fogg is really going to be hurting. It was easy to spot Chunny, the mechanical elephant, as she was easily the largest creature, no, indeed, structure in all Allahabad. Her owner's eyes lit with avarice at our approach. My friends, do not make me commit to paper the sum that Monsieur Fogg paid for that elephant. I fairly burst with indignation at the exorbitant price. I muttered that she might as well be made of solid gold rather than forged iron, but my master demurred that gold was most practical metal for vehicular construction. All three of us, myself, Mr. Fogg, and Sir Francis, mounted under the iron carriage suspended within the belly of rotating gibbles which comprised her belly. The cage kept the carriage from pitching and rolling, with Chunny iron foot gate, like a gyroscope one would perch within. The man-hout scrambled up behind the pachyderm's padded neck, and we set off in a straight line towards Calcutta. Man, that really cut into our funds. Greetings, Sir Francis. Calcutta to Singapore? Calcutta to Singapore, please. Port Moresby sounds, oh, darn. Stonetown? Oh, darn. Here we are going to Singapore, and I have no clue exactly how much we're going to fetch there. We were 4 hours into the short cut through the Jharkhand forest when the Mahout called for a halt. I watched his face, which went utterly pale and still at the sound of cymbals and bells overlaid with voices raised in chant. The Mahout urged Chunny behind some thick foliage and turned off her engine. She slumped into guttering silence. Through the branches I saw more than 40 men and women in a procession. They had the look of rich mercenaries, but they are but demented ones, offering their weapons to priests for blessing. Behind the procession loomed a four-armed mechanical Kelly with a burnished black skin, gleaming ruby eyes, and a protruding tongue the color of blood. She brandished wickedly curving blades in 3 of her arms as she took each piston-driven step, and she clutched a young woman whose head, neck, shoulders, ears, arms, hands, and toes were loaded down with jewels and gems, and whose eyes were thickly cold. Sir Francis looked troubled. I have heard rumors that the Kali cult sacrifices virgins. The Mahout shook his head. She is no virgin. That is the widow of the Rajah. She looked very small and frail in the iron arm of the mechanical goddess, but was quickly lost from view. The Mahout had begun to start Chunny's engine when Monsieur Fogg said, "Suppose we save this woman." "How exactly?" I demanded with some excitement. "I see only one course." The project he then outlined was a bold one, not to say impractical. Well, I can't say that word. Monsieur Fogg was to risk life, or at least liberty, and therefore the success of his tour to rescue the lady. I was ready for anything that might be proposed. As for my master, I perceived a heart, a soul, under his icy exterior for the first time. We decided to wait till the early hours of the morning and spirit the woman away from camp when the mercenaries were asleep. Alright, we're wasting a little time, but we're going to save a girl. We crept up on the Kali Bahaks as they slumbered in a clearing beside a ruined temple. There were guards patrolling at each corner of the camp. A stealthy rescue would be impossible. I was seized with an admittedly foolhardy notion. To ride Chunny into the camp. I pushed Chunny's lever all the way forward before leaping off the howdah. Chunny screamed and charged. The guards scattered out of the way with cries of alarm, and the newly awoken mercenaries ran this way and that. The camp was in uproar. I stole into the camp with soft, careful steps, but could not help a triumphant grin as I passed by without attracting undue notice from the panicking mercenaries. I found the young prisoner huddled in sleep, and reached out to her shoulder to wake her. My fingers barely brushed her tunic when I felt my legs swept out from underneath me. I dropped to my knees. Quick as a panther, the woman leapt to her feet and pressed the edge of a gleaming curved blade to my neck. Her lips were drawn into a grin more bloodthirsty than ladylike. "Good morning," she said in cultured English tones. "A pleasure to make your acquaintance." And so we came to be prisoners of the Kali cult. In the forest of and the woman, Adoa, turned out to be the leader rather than a prisoner of this band of mercenaries. They had risen up against the British after the death of Adoa's husband, the Rajah. Despite her fierce appearance, she left me my journal and pen. My documentary efforts seemed to fascinate her, and she demanded that I read my recent entries until she came to this one, featuring herself. Her brow wrinkled. "We are not a Kali cult, monsieur. Erase that." I glanced at the mechanical goddess, and Adoa waved a bejeweled hand. "We believe in the goddess Kali, but that does not make us a cult. Are all followers of Christ fanatics?" "Christ is not a death god," I contended. She raised a disbelieving eyebrow, but only said, "Kali is the goddess of change, not death. She is a warrior against evil." From her glances towards the Englishman, it was clear who represented this evil in her mind. She left me with those words and moved on to interrogate Monsieur Fogg, who was attempting to sit very straight in hempen bonds. As night fell in the forest, I pondered the possibility of escape from Adoa and her mercenary band. Darn. Well, there goes another day. Monsieur Fogg. I woke to a strange scene. Adoa and Monsieur Fogg were sitting at the feet of the mechanical goddess, sipping tea and conversing. Inasmuch as my master conversed, I shared a look with Sir Francis, who looked affronted, though that may simply have been the Englishman's thwarted desire for morning tea rather than any moral objection. Adoha laughed and placed a delicate hand on my master's elbow. Mon Dieu, she was flirting. This was useful. I resolved to use her distraction to find a way out of our rather unfortunate situation. I enlisted the aid of Sir Francis, who was tied nearby. He was an old Indian hand, after all, and had seen military service. We made a plan to sham stomach pains and attempt to overpower the guards when they approached. Suffice to say that the only result was a sharp thump with the butt of one of the mercenaries' pistols. I slept uneasily, contemplating more drastic action in the morrow. Uh-oh. Well, we're gonna waste 2 days. When I awoke, Monsieur Fogg and Adoa were nowhere to be found. One of the mercenaries took me to a nearby stream for a wash, and when I returned, Adoa was standing in the middle of the camp. Monsieur Fogg was a few paces behind, looking slightly disheveled to my expert eye. Was his cravat ever so slightly crooked? Quel horror. I don't know how to say that. Mr. Fogg has explained your circumstances to me, she said, giving me a nod. I find your wager most amusing. We will convey you to Calcutta. I glanced at my master, whose cheeks were perhaps ever so slightly stained with red. A telltale sign. Though I would never be so indelicate as to suggest anything untoward had occurred between an English gentleman and a Rani-turned-outlaw. The 5 of us, my master, Sir Francis, the Mayhout, Adoa, and myself, mounted the mechanical collie, who carried us with a loping grace to the outskirts of Calcutta. I dare not approach the city. Your monarch has a bounty on my head, Adoa said as a farewell. I hope you write my story well, Passepartout, she added, before bestowing a wink upon Monsieur Fogg. Good luck. And to you I called, though her band of freedom fighters were arrayed against the forces which my master had held dearest, the crown, the empire, and the law. We walked the last mile or so and finally arrived at our destination, the prosperous, urbane city of Calcutta. Wow. Did we arrive slightly faster? Yeah, we arrived slightly faster. Nice. Alright, let's explore and get good. Calcutta was an industrial city which had built its wealth on opium, textiles, and indigo. But that was not to say it was uncultured. The chai shops, which I passed by, were all thronged with affluent Babus and Ben Hengis discussing poetry and literature, and the sticky subject of Indian independence. It seemed there was discontent brewing in several places, and I wondered if it would be able to avoid all consequences of it. Where is it the most dangerous now? I asked, and the woman nodded. I hear the mountains to the east are teeming with separatists, she declared. They mean to attack Chittagong. I returned quickly to Monsieur Fogg, who was sitting, staring into space with a faraway look. Perhaps he had not quite left our elephant behind. Oh. Bolt of silk. I'm going to sell those and get that, because that's good in Singapore. Plan. Tomorrow at 9. Alright, looks like we're going to hotel for the night. We'll pass the night here. We took a room, settled in, and I afforded my master every service, because he's not feeling very great. You really should not have done that, Monsieur Fogg. Minus 34. Don't worry, Monsieur Fogg. We'll make it through. Me and you. Together. The SS Thunder of Epiccar shipped line had 10 years previously, set the record for the fastest journey between Singapore and Hong Kong, and our captain promised us a journey of 5 days rather than the usual figure of 6. Oh, excellent. Singapore, madam. Let's see, Singapore to Stonetown? No, does the Senji ever flood? Singapore. Batavia? Brisbane. Oh, nothing. Darn. Chittagong. Ooh, he took a hit. Don't worry, Monsieur Fogg. I took a turn around the deck, interested in who else might be aboard. Captain Ong An Lee was a dashing fellow, with merry eyes, who had run off from his family and joined the merchant navy in Singapore at a young age. The ship was crewed by Lascars, a mix of Indians, Singaporeans, Chinese, and Malay, who all spoke an entirely incomprehensible sailor's dialect, which I found utterly fascinating. I endeavored to pick it up as many words as the odd patois as I could on our voyage. Early on the first day, we stopped at the port of Chittagong to take on more passengers. Then the captain blew the whistle loud and long, Full speed, he declared. You'll see. Monsieur Fogg. We dined at the captain's table. He made his toast and then asked Monsieur Fogg outright whether he was an opium trader and I his factorium. I looked at my master, who merely said he was not. Captain Ong guffawed and commanded our glasses once filled once more. It is a profitable business, he advised. A man can make his fortune in opium if, he addressed the last to my master, he is not squeamish. Morals are not squeamishness, I replied coldly. The opium trade profits from the weakness of men. Yes, Captain Ong agreed, some people are weak, and some overcome their weakness. I believe in freedom. The people of China are not children, that we need to mind them like an overanxious parent. Monsieur Fogg gave me a quelling look before turning to the captain. Your business is your own, Captain Ong, as long as you conduct me to Hong Kong in 10 days as agreed. Fear not, Mr. Fogg, I have anxious customers awaiting my cargo after all. We're not going to Hong Kong. Fogg. I woke thinking of the Ranny-turned bandit Adoa. As I tied my master's cravat in the morning, I blurted, I wonder how she is. Monsieur Fogg glanced down at my hands upon his collar. To whom do you refer, Passepartout? Why, Adoa, of course, I clarified, unable to hide my admiration for the woman, despite a rather unfortunate hostage situation. The skin of Monsieur Fogg's throat colored a delicate pink. It was so slight a reaction that I would not have noticed it if I had not been engaged in tying his cravat. I do not wish to speak of Miss Adoa. I left it at that, and reapplied myself to the matter of my master's cravat, swallowing down any lingering curiosity. Oh, I'm pretty sure you know what's going on, Monsieur Passepartout, Mr. Fogg. The Lascars who made up the crew seemed to find me an object of great curiosity. I found them curious in return. My attempts to learn a few words of their cobbled-together tongues were met with howls of good-natured laughter. A young Malay shyly asked me what Paris was like. It is beautiful, I said cautiously. The scene glitters like a snake. The theaters spill lights and color into the streets. The cafes are full of men and women debating and drinking endless cups of coffee. There are beautiful women and beggars all on the same street. She looked at me curiously. I took a deep breath, dissatisfied with my answer. It is much like any other place, I said finally. It is glorious and terrible. The words are incapable of truly describing it. Yeah, I know you feel somewhat below. Sorry, I can't help you more. Worm and Desert Railway is faster, cheaper, and drier. Today we stopped at Singapore, on the southernmost tip of Malay Peninsula. Singapore had been British for many decades, and from the harbour it seemed almost as if some little town in Kent or Surrey had been shipped piece by piece and reconstructed on this far shore. We thanked our captain as we disembarked. He nodded once, but I felt happy to see the back of us. Excellent, we made it to Singapore. Now let's get all of our stuff sold. Ooh, not bad. Very good. And okay. And we're gonna sell that too. Brisbane. Very good bargaining, Passepartout. Singapore was a British colonial port, peopled largely by Chinese, Malays, and Indians, and fueled by rubber exports and opium wealth pouring into the new banks. I walked along the harbour front and spied brightly painted airships and well-rigged boats heading for distant ports. I inquired about vessels heading for the eastern town of Brisbane. The rubber merchant laughed bitterly in my face. We have no business with them, criminals and colonists. Why would any Singaporean go there? It is a place of beauty? The woman scowled at me. Beauty is, and she grabbed my hand, drew up my thumb and a forefinger together before finishing, a markup. I tugged my hand away and moved on, asking instead about this Dutch city of Batavia. This Chinese sailor pointed me in the direction of a sailboat, which bore the rather insalubrious name Spicy Jake. I wouldn't go to Batvia even if you paid me a king's ransom, the sailors chuckled. Why is that? I heard that the natives are fighting the Dutch colonists. I have a nose for bloodshed. The Chinese sailor shrugged. Then again, you rich people do whatever you want, so why am I bothering? Thank you for the warning, I said politely, not wanting to insist on my lack of wealth to a man wearing rough clothes upon a body bent with labor. The sailor jerked a nod and went back to his companions, leaving me to contemplate his advice upon the Singaporean dock. New routes discovered. What do you got? Batvia? Alright. We got Batvia, and I kind of wanted to head to Brisbane. Maybe we can go to Batvia to Brisbane. I think we're gonna hotel for the night. Within the last night of the evening, my serious concerns about Monsieur Fogg made me seek out a doctor. He touched my master's forehead. A mild fever. I would say 4 days to recover full strength. There was no alternative. I kept my master to his bed, a terrible weight, but after 4 days he had last recovered. Market. We're going to take that to Brisbane. Yeah, let's leave tomorrow. And with that, we are going to pause this episode, and we will see you next time.